Aki here with Nate28, and this is another Crossbeats production. This is another, I guess, quick review on the Izotope Neutron. I did another video on this and it was picked up quite well, so I figured I'd do another quick review. I don't have a lot of time to go in depth on this particular video, but there's one thing I did miss out on the previous video that I was meaning to show, and that was something to do with the masking feature on Neutron. There's a couple of different things that this plugin does, and it does it really well, I believe. Actually, it does a lot of different things, but it really has some good features in it where it will generate a preset or an active preset on your particular item of instrument, whatever that might be. So, for example, on this particular kick and the bass that I've got going, so on the bass, I tend to, I guess, limit the bass a lot, so I can control the bass. And this is just a rough mix, by the way. This beat I just made tonight for this video, just for the sake of it. And it's nothing completion wise, it's not complete, but I just wanted to show you how this plugin really works and give you kind of an understanding of the masking feature within Neutron. So basically the way that you set Neutron up is, I'll give you a quick overview. So obviously you'd load an instance of Neutron, so I'll just pretend like, actually I'll just go and redo it. So I'll remove that. So I go in here, load an instance of Neutron, and it brings up Neutron. This is a demo version, as you can see, so I'm just showing this for you guys to see how it works. So first off, if I play the bass, I'll just play the bass line in this track and give you an idea of how it sounds first. Actually, wait, let me just put a limiter on this thing so I can turn the volume up a bit. And we'll get something going on in this thing. So pull this baby down. Alright, cool. Alright, so that's pretty much the mix. Haven't touched Neutron at all. So the way that Neutron works is you put Neutron as an instance onto your instrument, whatever that might be. You can turn on Track Assistant. Sorry about the clicking and the popping, it's just low ratio on the bit rate that I've got. Actually, let me just quickly turn that up so it doesn't do that again. So if you have a low sample bit rate, it kind of does that when you start to load lots of instances of plugins on there. But anyway, so okay, as you can see, it's generated me a setup. This is just a quick setup through that Track Assistant. So what Track Assistant is it's, I guess, a computer behind the scenes which identifies the frequencies that are affecting the mix in a negative way, and it tries to emphasize the frequencies that are actually beneficial to the mix. So as you can see, it brought up some frequencies along the spectrum here. So they're pretty much, what's really cool as well, I really love this feature, is that you can see what key the actual frequency is in. So if you're mixing and you understand on the piano roll there's frequencies within each key on the piano, they all correspond with the frequencies within the spectrum as well. So it's really beneficial if you know the key of your song. You know that certain parts of your instrument are going to be, I guess, helping that song sound the way it should, and other frequencies are going to be negative to that song. So this is really great. So if you know that, for example, your kick's in the key of G or key of G sharp, or yeah, it is G sharp, then you kind of know that that frequency is going to help your mix sound the way it should. So that's another tutorial altogether, having the right key of song. But this particular EQ has EQ'd out certain frequencies like C4 where it felt like it didn't need it. It also EQ'd out some of the low end, real low end frequencies like 39 to 40 hertz. And it's created sort of like an increased boost, or a minus, actually a shelf minus. So that's around about 1100 frequency kind of spectrum. So midway frequency. Anyway, so why I wanted to show you was the masking feature. So I didn't show this in the previous video, and I just must have got sidetracked, so I apologize for that. But pretty much you turn masking on doing that button there. You load up whatever instance that you want to find out what's going to be masking. So for example, if you've got a bass and a kick together, obviously those two instruments are going to steal frequencies from each other. So it's really just a game of getting the frequencies to sit right together in the mix and have them, focused and clear. As I said, this is a really rough mix, so I haven't really got to that part of the mixing side of things yet, but I want to show you how this plugin works so you can understand it. So you obviously turn this masking feature on, you've got your kick, so that's what I'm trying to see whether or not that's matching. The really cool thing is here with the EQ curve can be affected in multiple different ways. So for example, this is the Neutron instance that I've got on my kick. I'll just pin this to the board there, and I'll bring up the kick EQ just on its own so you can see how it affects the EQ. So say if I move this, you can see it's all moving on the other EQ there. So you've got a clear EQ to see where your curves are at, and you can focus on those and really get in there and dive deep. There is one feature that I really think is super awesome for mixing bass, and that's the inverse link connection here. So say for example I've got this and I lower that frequency on my bass, as you can see up here, it's increasing that frequency. So I mean, that is like probably the most handiest thing, the unique style of EQ that you can use for blending your bass and your kick together. I've used that type of EQ fashion before. I've just never had it in a plugin where I could just instantly load up a plugin and have it right there in front of me and link the two together, like they're instantly linked. So I think that's like really cool. That's super amazing in my eyes anyway. I mean, that's just one really cool feature, that inverse link setup there. And you can just bypass, so if you hold that, you can bypass really quickly both the plugins to see if it's changed your mix at all, and unbypass by letting go of the mouse. As you can see, there's certain features in here that I've turned on. That transient shaper didn't turn on originally when I first did the track assistant. I've just turned that on to see how that sounds on the mix. But anyway, let me just play it with it on there, and then I'll play it with it off, and you can kind of hear how it's affected the mix. Don't worry too much about the mix because it's not right there how I wanted it to sound. This is just a real quick tutorial, I guess, review on this plugin. So let's get to it. Okay, so if you see that little orangey reddy kind of color with the alert thing there, it's saying that this frequency within both the kick and the bass are using the same frequency. So there's a certain factor where it's called masking, and in frequencies where they're using the similar kind of frequency or the same frequency, they tend to mask each other. So you can think of it in the fashion of if somebody is talking at a lower volume and then somebody comes in the room and starts talking at a louder volume, that person that talks at a louder volume is going to start masking the person that's talking at a lower volume. I know that's kind of a metaphor that you could think about it in that fashion, just so you can understand it, I guess. It's not a perfect metaphor, but it definitely gives you an understanding of the fact that one frequency is taking over the other, and that's kind of where this plugin really helps you identify what's happening in that area. So as you can see, it's masking my bass, and if I reduce this down, say I reduce some of the bass out, you can hear that the low end of my actual 808 kind of kick thing has been reduced. Say for example I reduce this as well, the mask emitter has gone down now. So you can see that both have that real same kind of frequency in the kick and the 808. So I guess, when you've got something like this, a feature that tells you what's being masked, you can decide then how effective you want to be with the EQ in that lower end frequency field. So say, I wanted to have more of my kick standing out, or I want to have more of my bass standing out, you can really identify now where those two kick and the bass are sitting. So that way, when you go and do your technical EQ curves, or if you do, small EQ curves or whatever it is that you're doing with your EQ, you can really identify that. So I think that feature alone is probably, in my mind, it's almost worth just the plugin itself. But on top of that, you know, like I said with the EQ, you get to identify the frequencies, you get to identify the key that they're in. There is a Waves plugin that does that with the EQ, where it tells you what key that you're EQing in. But I think that if you can get a plugin that does all sorts of stuff like this one does, it's a real winner in my eyes anyway. And, you know, as I said before in the previous video, I really don't get anything out of selling this plugin. It's not that I'm trying to get money or anything out of the plugin. It's the fact that I feel that this plugin has really advanced the way that mixing can be done, and especially for the home studio, or anyone, even pros could use this and get a lot done in a faster time. If you're using this for production of film or production of music or whatever it is, I really think that, you know, if you have an understanding, like I said before in the previous video, if you have an understanding of how EQ works, it definitely helps you and speeds you up in your mixing process. I said last time in the video before as well that I think the downfall to this plugin would be to become lazy and not EQ and not compress things that you would normally do in your learning process of EQing and compressing. Like, you know, if you're always relying on the compressor in this plugin to do your compression, and you never understand the ratios that you should use, the attack, the release settings, even the mix. Like for example, in this compressor here, it's got a mix setting. If you're continually using this, you might start to forget what you should do when you're compressing something. But then at the same token, it might teach you a lot too. If you don't know a lot about compression and you watch how this works, you might learn, okay, on a vocal I need a certain ratio. So say for example you need a ratio of 4 to 1. You might learn that the knee of 30 that's on this compressor works really well with one vocal and not so good with another vocal. You might learn that having a high ratio, like a 10 to 1, but a small amount of compression helps you control the vocal, and then you have a separate compressor on there to just slightly compress the vocal a little bit more. But, you know, like it's just understanding different things and different frequencies, and understanding how different compressors and how, you know, different ratios and your attack release settings, like I said, how they affect certain things. So I think you would learn a lot if you really paid attention to what this plugin was doing. I think it has been really well engineered to give you a good concept of how things work. And if you just understand, like, I know if you saw this plugin without understanding the behind the scenes kind of thing, I know it would probably be a bit daunting to really, you know, start to use this, and you'd probably wonder what the heck's going on. But I guess once you get into the plugin, you start to understand it. I think the best thing is to not overdose on plugins. I think you should really focus on just buying 1 or 2 good plugins and get to learn them, especially a plugin like this. Get to learn it, get to understand it, work with it for maybe a couple of years even, and be a professional at using that one plugin, be it an EQ or a compressor. I've got, I guess, multiple different plugins now, but I've been doing this for about 6 years, so I guess not to say that I'm a pro or anything, because I'm still learning and I'm far from a pro, but it's just that over my time I've found that restriction is always sort of helpful in learning certain things. So without further ado, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was beneficial to see how the masking feature worked on this plugin, and I will be probably doing other videos on this plugin again. I just want to really do a quick video on showing how the masking plugin works. So, you know, like you see there, I've just clicked both masking for kick and bass, and it brought up both the EQ curves, and it just gives me a way of working on those 2 curves really quickly and effectively. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and peace.